Alright guys, welcome to Formula 1 news. Lando Norris on pole position for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but not the Mercedes farewell that Lewis Hamilton was hoping for. An absolute disaster caused by Kevin Magnussen. Chaos ensues after the bollard goes awry, but also Mercedes had their part to play. Toto Wolff fuming in his own team for messing around the timings and the strategy of qualifying that ruins Hamilton's farewell this weekend. What does that say about the team that Lewis Hamilton has effectively decided to leave for Ferrari going into next year? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, quickly an update on Liam Lawson because Red Bull are supposedly going to get this locked in. Sergio Perez is done. We're almost convinced that at this point Q3 made that extra clear in my opinion, but Liam Lawson is going to be getting that drive per sources as it stands. This continues to frustrate me because Liam Lawson, when I saw him in Formula 2, I never honestly thought that he was going to be anything super special, but he did do an excellent job last year when he came into the AlphaTauri for Daniel Ricciardo, but this year he's come in again into that seat for Daniel Ricciardo, and he's not delivered what I hoped he would deliver, and not probably what Red Bull hoped he would deliver. But seemingly it doesn't matter anyway, because Yuki is somehow problematic, or he might be too competitive with Max, or I don't know, mentality-wise, of course, there have been questions and concerns on Tsunoda with Red Bull, but it continues to frustrate me how Tsunoda has come in and beaten another teammate and basically just, stomped them to the curb on some level. Now, yeah, Lawson's been reasonably competitive with Tsunoda, but in terms of qualifying results, well, we'll see them in the coming minutes yet again. But no, it's Lawson who's going to get the drive. So I think it's pretty frustrating. I don't think it's Red Bull's best opportunity if they are genuinely trying to win next year's Constructors title. I'm putting Yuki in the car. They're probably going to put Lawson in the car. The reality is Perez ain't going to be in the car per our current understanding. Let's talk about the on-track stuff though, because it was again another McLaren 1-2 in practice today. It looked ominous for the qualifying session, but it was far from simple what happened during quali. But again, Hamilton in third. So the Mercedes looking good in Hamilton's hands, and it was actually noted today by Mercedes that they set up a car in a certain way this weekend, and when they set the car up in a certain way, Hamilton likes it and can very much cope with these ground effect cars in that setup. However, it seems on multiple, maybe the majority of weekends this season, they've set the car up in a different way, which Russell seems to prefer, and maybe that's how they feel like they've been able to maximise performance, but of course, they're also generally going to favour Russell over Lewis. I do find it interesting how, for recent rounds anyway, Hamilton's been getting beaten by Russell, and part of that has been differences in setup between the drivers, it seems. This weekend, Mercedes is saying, oh yeah, we gave Hamilton a setup that he likes, and, on his farewell weekend, where obviously they want him to do well, although you wouldn't guess that based on the team's strategy performance during qualifying, and all of a sudden Hamilton's kind of flying and seems significantly faster than Russell. So yeah, I think Hamilton will probably leave this weekend knowing that he's still got it, and probably telling Ferrari, hey, if you guys set the car up like this, then I can get along very well with these ground effect cars. The reality is, though, that Mercedes had to execute in qualifying, not just in practice, and that's where the problems seemingly began. Starting here, by the way, from the Mercedes side. So, Hamilton's last weekends, it's all about the farewell, right? It's obviously a big deal, been there a decade, won all the championships, his final race with the team, and they did this thing on his car above his wheel. Every dream needs a team. Now, I guess it's kind of a nice statement. It's true, right? I mean, if you're trying to win championships and stuff, you need a team behind you. It's maybe not the statement that I'd have expected. Well, I would have probably expected Mercedes to make it, but I think this weekend is probably more about Hamilton than it is about Mercedes to some degree, because, it's his final race with the team, and it's not like Merc are going anywhere, whereas Hamilton is leaving to Ferrari, and that's obviously a big change in the sport. But, Hamilton wasn't happy with the sticker, says you got to remove it, probably just because it was distracting, right? I mean, it's just in the eye line where you're trying to spot braking points and apexes and stuff like this. Hamilton's like, get it out of my cockpit, get it out of my sight, please. And maybe there were other reasons for that as well, I don't know. Nico Rosberg, of course, was talking about it and saying that maybe that wasn't the message that he expected Mercedes to be sending. He says, preferred reading something like every team needs a hero or something. We're trying to celebrate Lewis here, maybe. So even then, Mercedes didn't exactly nail things, did they, with their farewell weekend, where they're catching flack for the way that they've done it. I think it does show a thing or two about not even necessarily the culture, but just the way that Mercedes are run as a Formula 1 team. But let's talk about qualifying. This was incredible how Perez got this lap time reinstated. Looks like he was outside of track limits, but actually he wasn't by a millimetre, probably, with his front tyre just about, maybe, on that white line. There was a couple of these happening as well. It's a big deal around Abu Dhabi, it always is, and that's probably okay. But this was Lewis Hamilton on his final run, and it was a very interesting situation here, because Hamilton was clearly fast enough. He knew he was fast enough. The car was obviously fast enough to comfortably fight for pole, or at least get in the mix, I guess, in for pole position. At least to try and qualify well and have a good, podium chance on the final weekends. However, you can see under Hamilton's car a bollard, which his floor has just completely run into. Now, this was dislodged after, Sector 1. So his lap time lost during Sector 1 was significant. It was like a tenth or so, tenth and a half of a second, I think he lost due to this, which obviously is a big deal, but he could have potentially made that time up elsewhere if not for the way that Mercedes set him up in terms of how much gap he had to the car in front. And that's really the big drama here. The bollard is just unbelievably unfortunate. I don't know what Hamilton did to deserve this luck at Abu Dhabi. But yeah, we know what happened when he arrived here in 2021. This track just hates him, I guess. This track just hates him. It is what it is. And it's just incredibly unfortunate for this time to Lewis on his final weekend of Mercedes. Now, this is how it happens. This is Kevin Magnussen causing chaos, as he likes to do, on this, final run, basically, of all the guys had. And should it have been the final chance? That is another question. But, yeah, he runs over this bollard and slaps the bollard over to the left-hand side. Just have a look at this, how incredibly unfortunate this is. So, K-Mag is pulling over to the left-hand side here to try and get out of Hamilton's way, which he does, but he smashes the bollard at this moment, and there's just nothing Hamilton could do but drive over the thing. It's incredibly unlucky. And I think the question that I have is, of course, if Mercedes took this approach differently to qualifying, Hamilton wouldn't have been in this position to run over the bollard. Now, the reason why there were problems here for Mercedes was largely because that they decided to scrub a set of hard tyres. Now, this is just something that teams tend to do in FP3, right? So if you go out on a brand new set of tyres, you know that it's got that shiny surface to it you often see in qualifying and stuff. However, in the race, the teams tend to, at least on the harder compounds, prefer you to run a set of tyres that are scrubbed, which means they've had a lap of wear, a heat cycle, as they call it, thrown into them. So the tyre surface is now more abrasive than it would be otherwise, and that tends to mean that you're not really taking life out of the tyres, but you are meaning when you drive out of the pit box with them on, instead of them being slick and ready to go, they're a little bit scrubbed, tends to give you more grip on the outlap. That tends to be the point if you're trying to do an undercut or prevent an undercut or something like that. So this is a common feature that is done, and Mercedes decided that they would send Hamilton out during qualifying, which is very rarely seen to do this. Now, was this necessary? Was this needed, at all for Mercedes to go and do this? The answer is almost certainly no, but yet they decided to do it anyway, and just messing around and adding unnecessary risk. I mean, I think the reward for messing around the sequencing like this is very, very minimal in the grand scheme of things. There's maybe a few percentage points chance tomorrow that will make a difference in the race. But of course, in qualifying, you really don't want to take any chances here. And this is not the first time this season that Hamilton's been out early in qualifying due to Mercedes messing around the sequencing as to which he's out there. The bollard was unlucky, but this decision from Mercedes, this could have been controlled better. So Hamilton goes out, therefore, having scrubbed the set of hard tyres with not really much time left. He's in all sorts of traffic, and he's only a couple of seconds behind the Alpine of Doohan. Of course, the car going pretty slow. So that was a massive issue for Hamilton, and not only did he have the bollard, but he had the dirty air from the car in front, like a 2-second gap he had rather than the 6 to 7 second that you tend to need if you want to ensure that your lap is not going to be compromised. So it was unfortunate on many levels, especially though from the Mercedes Mercedes side, it's his last weekend with the team. You've got to do everything possible, you would think, to make sure that it's going to work. But yeah, that's not what Mercedes delivered here. Albon, Zhou, Hamilton, Colapinto, Doohan. Doohan was just kind of slow. Colapinto might get that drive next year. That's been a rumour anyway. He says he's still going to try. Was this enough to convince them? Probably not, but it's not like Doohan's been convincing either. Then again, at first weekend, and in Ocon's car, and Ocon was saying the car was dodgy compared to Gasly's. So take that, I guess, as you will. This, though, was Q2, and I've got to say, Formula 1 right now is banging when it's like this. Look at these times. Leclerc, for now, 5 thousandths ahead of his teammate. Verstappen, Hülkenberg, keep that in mind, Hülkenberg, Gasly, Norris, 6 drivers within a tenth. Like, that is unbelievable scenes. Piastri, 2 tenths, Alonso, 3 tenths, Russell, 3 tenths, Perez was like, 4 tenths back, and he was in P10, and Tsunoda was barely behind that. So the level of competitiveness within these cars has been so good to watch lately. And the fact that the Haas and the Alpine are able to get up there is mesmerizing, I think, for the sport. It's so exciting, I think, for next year as well, where we are right now. So Magnussen goes out. Leclerc, however, gets his poor lap time deleted. He was so close to turn 1, but they said it was over the limit, and therefore Leclerc was gone. And this is massive, of course, for Ferrari and the constructors. Leclerc had a chance to score good points. They were looking very good, the Ferraris, in that session in Q2. But Leclerc was just over the limit, goes to port P14. And of course, with the penalty, he's going to be P20, starting right at the back of the grid tomorrow. So, yeah, massively unfortunate for Leclerc. And to be fair, for Ferrari as well. Now, starting P11, even if he'd put it on pole, would have been a challenge regardless. But, yeah, starting from the back of the grid, he's going to need a couple of safety car interventions, I would say, Leclerc, if he wants to score anywhere near enough points to potentially take the championship over from McLaren. This, though, is crucial. Tsunoda was close to Lawson this qualifying session, but he did beat him again. And after, over 6 qualifying sessions we've had with these two as teammates, Lawson has lost every single one in regular qualifying. I think sprints might be a bit different. But in regular qualifying, this is what we have seen, and yet it's still not going to be enough for Yuki. I think, at this point, Yuki, if he does get an opportunity just to leave the Red Bull situation and go to another team, that's what I'd be thinking about doing, right? Because I think Yuki probably deserves better, I would say, than what we are currently seeing. This was Max, though, absolutely on the limit here. He somehow saved this one through the final corner and kept a wheel, because he kept his foot in a bit. He kept his front right tyre in track limits and then saved it. I honestly thought at one point he was going into the wall here, but he didn't. He saved it in the RB20 and he put in a time at the time that was good enough for pole position, but that's not how the session concluded. It was fascinating actually to see that Verstappen and that Red Bull had been kind of nowhere all weekends. Then they turn up to qualifying and they look very, very strong, and Max seemed not nailed on for pole, but it was looking difficult to beat him. Then on his final run, the Red Bull just didn't get the tyres in the right window, and Verstappen was kind of nowhere. He was like 4 tenths off the pace at the time, and he was slower than his own lap, which of course had a massive error, and well, they lost him a couple of tenths probably in that final sector. So still confusing, but when it matters, Lando Norris delivers the lap times. And I think one takeaway from this season has been that while Piastri has been good in the McLaren, it's honestly only been Norris, I would say consistently, that has made it look like the fastest car, week to week, as we have seen. And yes, he's not executed when it's mattered, but he still deserves credit for the pace that he has as a driver. Sainz put in a good lap, that was good enough for third, but the standout, of course, here being Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas, can you believe it? 3 tenths off pole, 4th place in the Haas, unbelievable scenes, and Gasly again, another mega lap time. Russell was in the end half a second off, so, even if Hamilton was up there and was significantly faster than Russell, which he was during practice, to be fair, he had about 3 tenths on Russell. Still, Hamilton qualifying any better than top 5, top 4 would have been a challenge. But of course, it was an option for Mercedes had they not messed things up, and that might have been good enough for a podium come Sunday. Unlikely from where he is. Literally just seen this hit the timeline, unfortunately, for the boys supporting Haas and Hülkenberg. He overtook a couple of cars in the tunnel of the pit exits, which is no longer allowed now in the race director's notes. And that's a 3 place grid demotion. So Hulkenberg's down to 7th, Gasly's up to 5th, and, well, it promotes Verstappen to 4th, Gasly to 5th, Russell to 6th, I guess, with Hulkenberg then in 7th. So, yeah, highly unfortunate, I guess, but Max from 4th, can he win from there? You know, you're not going to bet against it. The other name, of course, though, to look at it was Bottas, who put in a stunning lap to even get to Q3 in the Sauber. It is so sad to see him go, because he even said, Bottas, like, that was one of the best laps of my whole career that he did to get into the final part of qualifying, and he still delivers a good lap time that was nearly good enough for 8th, and was only a 10th off the Merc. Like, that's incredible from Bottas, and he's not going to be on the grid next year, but I think his performance and Zhou's performance have helped their cases a lot. Now the car is no longer a complete tractor. Bottas, I think, will be back. I certainly hope that he is, and Perez was 10th, so, yeah, always not ideal, but he at least made Q3, I guess, one for the record books. Just to quickly mention then, before we discuss the reaction, these are therefore the head-to-head numbers on the season. And, yeah, kind of what I was saying earlier, we've seen most of these as the year has progressed, to be fair. Like, obviously, the Russell-Hamilton is a big conversation point, but I would say the most surprising is probably this, just because it's not been talked about as much. Norris 20-4 to Piastri. Like, I think we will be having conversations on that during the off-season, and I'm certainly not stopping making content after this weekend is over. Let's talk about Hamilton, though. As he says, just my luck, it's okay, it is what it is. He was surprisingly, I mean, maybe not surprisingly, like, we know how Hamilton's mindset is. He was just like, you know, whatever. It's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. I'd love to inherit some positions with grid penalties, but, yeah, even though it wasn't a great session, it is what it is. I enjoyed driving the car. Hamilton says you couldn't have timed that whole bollard thing more perfectly. I was hopeful for a podium. I think it was possible, to be fair, Mercedes this weekend. Maybe it still is, if something absolutely insane happens. But the big drama on this really was from Mercedes side themselves, because Hamilton, you know, obviously wasn't happy about it. Certainly in the moment he wasn't happy about it, and afterwards as well. But I think crucially is from Mercedes side, because Hamilton's looking at Mercedes and thinking, all right, did I make the correct decision to leave this team? The answer right now seems to be absolutely yes. And this is where Toto Wolff was, you know, actually quite emotional in his frustration about the way that the team has, you know, handled this, as Hamilton, well, basically Toto said to Hamilton, we totally let him down, inexcusable, and goes on to say the following: I just need to apologise to Lewis, also to everyone on the team who worked so hard in making it a great end for him. He was the quicker guy with that kind of setup that we chose on the car, that's what I mentioned earlier, also to experiment for next year, and we totally let him down. Idiotic mistake of not going out earlier, inexcusable. I'm really so down about what has happened. This is the worst part of it, because it was just idiotic. So, yeah, he's calling out his team hard, and I think Hamilton will have a similar feeling. Is like, why was this whole, you know, going out late strategy necessary? Because it's not been the first time this season that it's cost Hamilton a potentially easier shot at qualifying further up the grid. And if you mess around like this, you're going to find out. And that's what Mercedes found out today. And if you're going to find out, doing it on Hamilton's last ever race weekend is not the weekend to make it happen, right? So I think as frustrated as Hamilton will be, it will prove to him that Mercedes, from top to bottom maybe in some levels, from car to strategy to operations to development, whatever, they are not the outfit they used to be. They are not the outfit that Hamilton won those world championships with. And as a result, Hamilton's made the right decision to leave to Ferrari. I think that might be what Hamilton's thinking tonight, but intrigue to your thoughts in the comments section below. I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating race tomorrow. McLaren, I mean, look, they can't lose the Constructors' Championship from here, you would imagine. And Max, of course, not his best day in qualifying, certainly his final run, but nonetheless, he's more than likely now thinking about next year and, you know, the potential title defense to come again. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.